Slash Dungeon is a pretty decent 2.5 Men episode. This is the second episode of the 5th season. It's directed by Ted Wass, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the events of the episode and share some thoughts. And it starts off with Charlie pretending it's Jake's birthday and they have tickets to a game. Jake doesn't realise that he's not being serious. He's only saying this to get out of spending the day with the woman who's in his bed. And Alan doesn't agree with this, which is fair enough. And then Evelyn comes over and suddenly Alan's pretty happy to lie about this. Turns out Evelyn needs an escort for an event. And Charlie ends up getting roped into this. And we go to the event. We spend a nice enough amount of time there. We're not there for too long, but enough time to get the atmosphere. And Evelyn's basically just gossiping about everything. Meanwhile, Alan is on a date in the house with a woman called Sharon. And she confesses she's not attracted to him. And I don't know if I admire her honesty or feel like she was really callous in the moment. I feel like she should have... I don't know. I feel like if somebody thinks they're about to have sex and then you just turn around and say to them, actually, even though I'm on a date with you, I don't think you're attractive. I feel like that's a bit harsh, but then maybe lying wouldn't be right either. I don't know. It just felt like a really awkward moment. And she ends up sleeping with Alan anyway. And she is sobbing afterwards. She hates herself. She ends up phoning, I assume, her therapist. It was quite a chaotic moment and probably very humiliating for Alan. Alan tries to talk to Berta about this the following morning, but their attention is quickly taken over by Charlie, who happens to be talking quite positively about Evelyn. She phones him up and he's really chipper on the phone to her and he's happy and he wants to spend time with her, which is not like Charlie at all. And Evelyn comes over and we have a lovely scene with them, and she forbids Charlie from calling Margaret or returning her call. They met at the event and clearly Charlie still has thoughts about phoning her, and well, the next thing we know, he's in bed with Margaret at Margaret's house. But then he realises he can't go through with it because he's promised Evelyn, which I think is quite sweet. But then it doesn't matter anyway. Even if he was going to go through with it, all we hear is a man's voice shouting Margaret's name. Her husband is back. And Charlie, shirtless, climbs out the window. And I love the fact that we cut away from that. We don't get to see immediately what happens. We get a little bit of suspense as we actually cut back to the house, and Sharon has come over. She wants to make it up to Alan. She had various excuses about mixing pills with this and that, and it didn't go according to plan. She was a little bit on edge, to say the very least. So she comes over to apologise and make it up to Alan, which seemed quite sweet. We'll come back to that again in a second. We then cut back to Charlie, who is hanging from the window, shirtless, which is funny in itself. It's quite an image. And then a bird lands on his head, which, again, pretty entertaining. And then we hear that, well, something is said that makes Charlie realise this had something to do with Evelyn. The next thing we see, Charlie has arrived home shirtless. He opens the door. Alan is there shirtless. Sharon is storming out of the house, screaming something at Alan as she leaves. Clearly, it didn't go according to plan again. And just the image of the brothers walking shirtless, one with his trousers on, and I think one had a towel. Alan had a towel around himself, just kind of walking slowly, defeated away. It was quite an image. I thought it was very effective and very well done. And in the final scene, when they're out on the deck, they do establish that, well, Charlie establishes that Evelyn had obviously called the husband, letting him know his wife was having an affair. I assume she didn't mention Charlie by name or anything. And obviously he went home early to catch her. And there are kind of two reasons for this. One, because she knew Charlie would do it regardless. And two, if Alison and her husband get a divorce, she gets to make a profit on the sale of the house. So that makes a lot of sense. And it kind of helps show that actually Evelyn and Charlie are not exactly the best of friends. And Evelyn still is always going to look out for Evelyn first and foremost. And it was a nice enough way to end things. Well, it ended quite dark, actually, with Alan having to go and, yet again, apparently, retrieve Sharon from the water. Apparently, it's something she does regularly after sleeping with Alan. So, kind of a dark way to end things, but in general, a pretty decent episode. Not one of my all time favourites. I didn't laugh out loud at any point, but certainly there were some good moments. Personal highlights would have to be. There are not many, to be honest. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. There are just not too many moments that really stand out. I guess when Evelyn came over and Alan suddenly realised actually it's fine to lie about having tickets to the game. And the look on Alan's and Berta's faces when they heard Charlie on the phone with Evelyn and he was saying these nice things about her, that was pretty fantastic. The image of Charlie dangling from the window I thought was very well done. And as I mentioned, the sight of Charlie and Alan, shirtless and defeated, walking away, which I thought was pretty great. So a good episode, absolutely nothing wrong with it. I did really thoroughly enjoy it. Maybe not the funniest, but then again, that's not saying a lot because the funny episodes, the really funny episodes, are just amazing, absolutely perfect. So this one, not quite up there for me, but still pretty decent. And ultimately, for me, Media Room / Dungeon was an episode of 2.5 Men that I enjoyed.